I had a hammer, I'd a hammer in the morning, I'd a hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd a hammer out danger, I'd a hammer out a warning, I'd a hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, if I had a bell, I'd a ring it in the morning.
Hello and good evening. If you are watching us, you are tonight on November 5th, 2019, you're watching us live. Welcome to Progressive TV, Radio on TV. I am your humble host, Moses Ross, and I am here substituting for our good friend Kayla Burns, who is not feeling a little under the weather, but hey, you've got my bright, cheery face here to walk you through all of the political landscape and what is coming up, what is happening right now, and what will be. And tonight, my co-host, as always, is Sherry Morris, and now she has a third name because she is married.
Yeah.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
It's been what now?
September.
In September.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I am envious. One of
Morris
these days-
is going to drop pretty soon.
Is it?
Yeah.
And so
I had to do a
rolling.
rolling transition. Yeah.
You know, that's wonderful though. That you're, that gives me hope. That one of these days I'll find one of that perfect partner, because I know that how
Yes, you
happy
will.
you are, happy you are with
Yes.
your new husband.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Well, you know what? Tonight we've got a nice broad slate of things to talk about. The first 15 minutes of our show tonight, we're going to be talking about the election that is going on right now nationwide, and also here in Oregon. I'm going to give you some updates and let you know what's happening here locally, how some of the local issues have turned out, how things are looking on the national stage, and where we're going to go from here as we prepare for the big year, the 2020 election year. It's going to be, if this year's election has any indication, it's going to be just a game changer in 2020 on both sides. I mean,
Yeah.
Democrats are ready for it, and I see Republicans getting ready for it as well.
Well, the Republican Party continues to shrink.
Yeah.
So, I mean, last man standing, who's it going to be? McConnell? Anyway.
Well,
sorry.
and to that point, we'll talk more about this later, is how some of these Republicans elected officials, what they are having to do to be able to retain their base.
Yeah, definitely.
How extreme they're having to get to make sure that they keep that base core of voters.
Do you think it's that? I was contemplating the other night, especially after the Republicans sort of tried to take their cell phones, or did.
Mm-hmm.
They crashed the Senate meeting for the investigation. And they were all the normal people who would be doing this without your Jim Jordans and stuff. And if you saw the group, we should have had the picture, if you saw the group of Republican men who were standing there at the podium as Gatz, I think it was, speaking, they were all your normal old white guys, right? The end of the Republican Party, as far as I'm concerned. I was considering, why are they doing this? They know they have to be able to see. I'm sorry, but the average American has above a 40% IQ, okay, or a 40-point IQ. They have to know. Trump's either got something on them, each and every one of them, because of if you look at Trump's network, his people go and dig up dirt on everybody, whether it's Republican, Democrat, Independent, Joe Blow down the street.
That's right.
He digs up the dirt. So he either has something on all of them, or he's paying them.
Well, and
one or the other.
That's right. And I venture to say that they're taking the same mode of survival, the same survival mode tactics that Trump has been doing for years when it comes to his opponents. First, you never admit that you're wrong. In fact, you project onto your opponent the things that they're accusing you of. Trump has
And
always
that's what
done
they're
that.
doing. Yeah, that's what he's always done.
And the Republicans, like the ones that you were talking about, that were in that media scrum right after they had gone into that hearing, barged into that secure hearing, they're just doing the exact same thing. They're just trying to project out what they think, what they have done, you know, and project it out onto their opponents, the Democrats. And I think it's really interesting, Sherry. I think that we're finally getting to a point where it's like the old fable of the emperor with no clothes.
Yes,
where
very much so.
Slowly but surely the crowd is beginning to realize that the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah.
And in this case, they're beginning to realize that the Republicans are losing any credibility with their arguments.
Well, the sad fact is, and I considered this a couple years ago after he took office, that it's going to take their pocketbooks being impacted at elevated levels for them to understand. Because look at the demographic. There is a guy I've been watching. His name is Bo from the Fifth Column. If you guys haven't seen him, I'm going to do a shameless plug. He even says the first video, what caught my ear on him, his first video says, yeah, I'm just an old truck driver and I'm a white Southern guy and, you know, I am right in Trump's target market. And no, I can't stand him. And the guy ends up he looks like Joe Blow truck driver, you know, talking on the YouTube. But he's a journalist. You don't find out till later that he's actually a journalist, that he's been a resistance advocate or a resistance activist for 10 years.
Right.
You know, just his demeanor, he talks about guns, he talks about Obama, he talks about Trump, he talks about all this stuff, and he's very common sense. I took your show away, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no.
But anyway, if you listen to him, he's even saying the same things we are.
Yeah.
And it's these people, you know, they've got to be smarter than this.
Well, I think, you know, it's really easy to get caught up into the cult of personality that Trump exudes. And, you know, let's face it, the Republican Party is completely caught up in it. And there are those that are there are those Republicans out there that are having second thoughts about their positions or their alignment with Trump. And I venture to say they're having a moral crisis in the fact that they're having to reconcile their values versus what Trump's values are. And, you know, and it's kind of interesting to see who breaks away and see who doesn't. You know, I think history will judge. I mean, you know, we'll see in a few years.
So why did Flake, so Flake retired. A lot of these others, there's been 6 or 7 of the Republicans who have retired and on their way out the door saying, this is wrong.
Right.
And Bolton about
John
Giuliani. Giuliani's a hand grenade, is going to blow us all up. Okay, you're saying this as what happened? Did you finally have this thought that this is all wrong and now you have to say something? Okay, so the new people, the new Congress, the freshman Congress, the Republicans, I can see what you're saying. They're probably having some moral dilemmas. What about McConnell?
Yep.
What about Lindsey Graham?
That's right.
Now, I never really liked Mitch.
McConnell? Yeah,
Not
Senator
Mitch McConnell.
Rudy Giuliani?
No, the president. He ran for president. The dark-haired suave. Yeah, Romney.
Mitt Romney. Yeah.
I never liked him, but I tell you what, I'm on his side now. Well, not to elect him or anything. I wouldn't if I lived in Utah. But he's the one who is not retiring. He got himself elected to go and stand up against Trump.
You know, the cynic in me thinks when Romney presents himself as the Republican opposition, the opposition to Trump within the Republican Party, the cynic in me thinks that he is just kind of positioning himself for the next presidential run. I would like to think, though, considering the foundation of his religion and of his value system that he has, that it's because he's having moral difficulties in reconciling what Trump says, what Trump does, and where the Republican Party, the values that the Republican Party is showing.
So that brings back to my question.
Yeah.
What about Lindsey? What about McConnell? Why are those two historians in Congress? They have been there since we were in our 20s, right?
Sure.
They've been there forever, and they know.
They do know, and that's the problem, you know, and that's the irony of it, is the blatant hypocrisy of it. You know, you look at McConnell, for instance, or you can get clips. There are video clips of Lindsey Graham during the Clinton impeachment process, where he was saying, you know, all piously that the Clinton, this moral failing of Clinton was impeachment worthy, and that they have to know all of the details, and they have to have all of this scrutiny, and it's so that we have the transparency, blah, 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 blah. But by golly, it doesn't apply, though, when it's a Republican that is in the office.
Who's not even a real Republican.
He's not even, exactly. And so, you know, it's a power play, in my opinion, pure and simple. It's just that McConnell has gotten quite used over the last decade, being Senate Majority Leader, or, you know, over the last 8 years, 7 years, of exerting that power for his patrons. And let's face it, both McConnell and Lindsey Graham, you know how much money they're getting in campaign donations, and I venture to say that the Russians somehow have compromised these guys. I mean, that's just my wild theory, and history we'll find out in history time. But
well,
you know,
McConnell,
in the history books,
the one oligarch, his name starts with a P. He was in a deal with McConnell to build factories in Kentucky.
Right.
And the guy, the oligarch, was also one of the, it has been found to be one of the funders behind the Trump campaign as well.
Yep,
through all the ads and everything.
And gave $1 million or something like that to the inauguration committee.
Yes.
The money from has just up and disappeared.
That's right,
over
through
the years,
Sunderland and stuff.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, it's so insidious how this all is, you know. And
it's all one big scandal.
Oh, and you know, as we find out how deep this goes and at what levels this is at, you know, like with it starts me wondering, how early did this begin? Did they really understand when Trump got elected, within months of Trump being elected, did he start to understand the magnitude of what he had at his fingertips now as president? Did he understand the ability of him to be able to compromise and to corrupt? I wonder. You know, I
think he saw an opportunity, but I don't know. And the only reason I'm saying this is because of how he's acted. Right. In what he's trying to do, okay? So he does all of these things that he thinks is perfectly normal,
right,
until he finds out it was against the law or it was wrong, well, and then all of a sudden it's different now. So I think he's an opportunist. At his core, he's an opportunist.
I would agree with you 100%.
Okay, I have all of this power. My God, I didn't expect to be here. And I have all of this power. Now I'm really going to do what I need. But there are also people pulling his strings, right?
And that right there is, I feel, what's the fundamental core of what Trump's motivations are. And I notice right now, we're trying something a little bit different here this show, in the sense that normally in a show, we usually either have a guest, or we have the show's entirely devoted to that guest. What I'm doing this time around, we have a guest that's going to be calling in that will be talking to us about health care for all, that Medicare for all program, and some of the efforts that they are doing here in Oregon to get it, to educate folks and to get parts of Medicare for all passed here in Oregon. And so we're going to have a guest coming on. But before that guest calls in and talks to us, I would like for everyone to watch this video of Senator Elizabeth Warren. This has been recently released, and she talks about Medicare for All, her program, Medicare for All, and how she's going to pay for it. So Marv, if you want to go ahead and play that video,
I
that'd
have
be
a
great.
plan for Medicare for All, and I'm proud that it's the first health care plan by anyone in this presidential primary that lays out the full cost and how to pay for it. And here's the deal. It doesn't raise middle-class taxes by 1 penny, not 1 penny. If we make no other changes over the next 10 years, Americans will reach into their pockets and pay out about $11 trillion on insurance premiums, co-pays, deductibles, and uncovered medical expenses. My plan reduces those costs to zero, sort of like an $11 trillion tax break. So we have two choices. We can maintain the status quo that leaves 24 million uninsured, leaves 63 million with substandard care, and forces Americans to ration medicine and turn to GoFundMes. Or we can spend slightly less on Medicare for All, which covers everyone, ensures long-term care for our seniors, and puts $11 trillion back in the pockets of the people by eliminating premiums, co-pays, and deductibles. Now, you might be asking, how can we possibly provide better coverage to more people for less money? Well, it's a two-part answer. Under Medicare for All, we rein in the corruption, the waste, the inefficiency, and the corporate profiteering. That's money we can save and money we can spend on actual care. So we pay less overall for health care to get more real health care coverage. The second part of the answer is to change the structure of who pays for health care in America and how. We're going to take the $11 trillion projected out-of-pocket health care costs over the next 10 years and make that number zero. No more premiums, co-pays, or deductibles. No more out-of-network bills. For middle-class families, that means thousands of dollars back in your pocket every year. Under my plan, existing federal and state spending on health care stays the same. For middle-class families, there'll be no new taxes. Look, you're already paying into Medicare and Medicaid, so you're done. No new taxes, no new costs. Business spending on health care also stays about the same. Payments just go to Medicare instead of to private insurers. That's about $9 trillion in the next 10 years. And we make up the rest largely with taxes on big corporations and the top 1%. So yeah, for the top 1%, they're going to have to pay their fair share. And corporations are finally going to have to pay the taxes they're meant to pay, just like everyone else. That's it. That's Medicare for All. It covers everyone, it's fully paid for, and independent economists have verified it's doable. All it takes is the courage to fight for it. Insurance companies and drug companies will spend tens of millions of dollars in political contributions and disinformation campaigns to try to keep tens of billions of dollars in profits flowing into themselves. That's corruption, plain and simple. We have to call it out and we have to fight back against it. Because like any big idea, you don't get what you don't fight for. We need a healthcare system that recognizes that healthcare is a human right, and I will fight to get it done.
That's a good job.
Okay, everybody, thank you. And now that you've seen that video, I'd like to introduce to you our guest for this evening, Valdez Bravo. Valdez Bravo works with Healthcare for All Oregon, and they have their objectives similar as Elizabeth Warren as far as implementing Medicare for All. Welcome to the show, Valdez.
Well, thank you so much, Moses, for the opportunity to speak on the program. It's your honor.
Well, the honor is ours. We just got done watching this awesome video of Elizabeth Warren really going into detail about how she was going to pay for Medicare for All, and that seems to have been the hiccup or the challenge when presenting Medicare for All to the public. Have you found that to also be challenging as far as sharing the concept of Medicare for All for people, or how's your experience been with that?
No, definitely. I think that has been probably the biggest challenge to date. I think everybody likes, once you talk about what a healthcare for all type system would look like, the fact that everyone you know, your family, your friends, your coworkers, pretty much everyone you know, would no longer have to worry about being bankrupted, from a acute medical illness or incident or accident, would have health care, would have comprehensive health care, would have dental care, would have mental health care, would have vision, all of that, all the things we typically cross our fingers and hope that we have access to typically through an employer-based insurance program. Everyone is really hip to that. They think that that's a great idea. But then the question, like you're saying, immediately comes up. How are you going to pay for it? Like, there's no way on earth that we could pay for that. But in fact, the money is there, as Senator Warren is saying in her plan, as Pramila Jayapal saying in her plan, as Senator Sanders, other proponents of this that are out there. There is money there. We just have to restructure things to pay for it.
And it's funny too. I've noticed that has been the real talking point against Medicare for All. They're really embracing this concept of how are you going to pay for it, and the ambiguity that comes from the unknown. And so I feel like it's kind of up to us to help to educate the public, because once they understand the concept of it, I feel that people will accept it and embrace it.
Well, another thing that I've been hearing and continue to hear to this day, even though I don't understand, is apparently insurance companies are popular with the users. And Elizabeth Warren actually addressed this with addressing deductibles. So my question would be, on my annual taxes, how much of the average earner's annual taxes would go to a Medicare for All program? And I am all for it.
Interesting. You want to try to tackle that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at how much the average family is paying for health care, it can be upwards of 1/3 of your income.
Easily.
I mean, 1/3 of what you're coming in. You have to provide shelter, for your family, whether you're renting or you're trying to buy a house or something like that. That's typically 1/3, right? And then like the old rule of thumb is, no more than 1/3 of your income. But then when 1/3 is going towards health insurance and health costs, depending on the types of conditions that you and your family members have, I mean, that can be a real barrier. And I think that if people look at the fact that all those premiums would go away, those co-pays would go away, those deductibles go away, and basically the biggest thing for me, I think, is the uncertainty would go away. You'd have it, and there, different types of plans. If that could happen, and just be like, those would just go away, and it would be paid through wealth tax or other types of taxes on the very wealthy and the 1%. Like that would be the best solution possible, because that would be what. There was a recent article that came out saying that would be the equivalent of the biggest pay raise to Americans in a generation, just by the fact of if those costs went away.
So I have one other question for you as well. So another aspect of this that keeps hitting me from other people, because I'm such an advocate for Medicare for All, I talk about it all the time, I understand the benefits. It will take down an entire integrated system that has been part of our society for at least 40 years. What would happen to the workers? What happens to the businesses? Does everything get sucked up into the government? How do they know how that will work?
That is a great point, and one that I don't think is actually talked about enough yet. Though I'm glad we're talking about it, because as we get closer and closer to this becoming a reality, when we have an elected Democratic president in 2020 who's championing this, that's going to be one of the things that the naysayers come out about and fear-mongering, and it's a very real concern. I was at the Medicare for All, or it was the Single-Payer National Strategy Conference that just happened. It was actually hosted in Portland a couple weekends ago.
Nice.
And there was this was national leaders from all over about the Healthcare for All movement coming together. This year it was in Portland, and there were speakers and a series of workshops. And one of the workshops I attended tackled exactly this point. It was called a just transition. What about those workers that are, medical billers in the insurance company, are in careers and long-standing occupations that are very much dependent on this type of system that, like you said, we've had for over 40 years. And what happens to them? And so there's going to be, it was really interesting, they had a gentleman actually from the railroads who was a union member with Teamsters, and he was talking about how they've approached this in their negotiations over the years with the railroads as the number of workers get smaller and smaller, and there's structural ways to build this in to protect those workers to make sure that they get retraining programs, that they get access to a GI Bill type, college money program for training. But there's also what kind of jobs are going to be needed in this post-Medicare for All environment. And maybe right now, I think, if you're sitting at your kitchen table going through some kind of massive healthcare life event they have, you end up becoming a navigator and trying to figure all this stuff out on your own and talking to people who have been through it and, reaching out to anyone you can and just trying to navigate this and all these costs that are associated with it. I heard from one woman recently who was she got diagnosed with a rare disease that required $98,000 in medicines every 6 months. Do you know anyone that can afford, the equivalent of $16,000 a month for your medicines? I don't. But on her own advocacy, navigation, she was able to negotiate her up to the Oregon Medical Board and get some kind of waiver or something. I think what will happen is you'll need retraining programs that'll be part of this, that'll be funded as part of this Medicare for All solution. But also, there's going to be new jobs that are needed. Healthcare navigators. Maybe somebody that's in the insurance agency right now that's typically on the other end of an insurance line helping you navigate this. Maybe they'll just be helping you navigate the system, and there's only going to be one system. It'll be a single-payer type system. There might also be other opportunities for, whole health coaches and other types of folks now that we're going to have comprehensive care. We've got a primary care shortage in America. There's not right off the bat, it's going to take a little time to ramp up and have enough primary care providers to cover all these people that now have access to primary care. There'll be maybe people that are health navigators and health coaches working at a lesser scope than a full-on MD, even less than a nurse or an LPN, who can help you navigate the system. So I think between the different types of new jobs that will be needed, and then also a just transition to make sure that we take care of those workers and that they're not just out in the cold now that we've shifted away from an insurance-based system.
Have the layers of regulation been?
That's a really good point. You're absolutely right, Sherry. It is something that we just don't really think about is how the shift in the business shift will affect the workers in those industries. But
will it affect
I
everybody?
would venture to say, though, that if we were getting to the point where we were actually implementing Medicare for All, those would be issues that would be discussed and negotiated and thought out before actually happening.
But we need to be able to market the solutions so to calm the worries of society.
And that's what it boils down to. I remember when I hate calling it Obamacare, but I'll call it Obamacare. The ACA, the Affordable Care Act, was developed, and all of the back and forth and the negotiations were,
it didn't even come up with
we had so many different. Everybody was trying to achieve the same goal, but given the circumstances of our current situation, Valdez, how much of this do you think is just fear of the unknown, this reticence to do something like Medicare for All?
I think that's the most of it, Moses. I think that the more we talk about it, and if you think about it, we've really only been talking about it as a national conversation for a short time now. Mm-hmm. And I think the more that we can talk about as plans come out from various candidates that are very detailed plans that can assuage any fears about how we're going to pay for it, is going to bankrupt our country. Hey, guess what? Healthcare is already bankrupting our country. 18% of our GDP is going towards it, and it's only slated to rise if we do nothing different to 30% of our GDP by 2050. So it's an unsustainable model as is. It's already bankrupting. So when you talk about that, but I think if we can have that kind of information handy to educate people, and then again, just assuage your fears of the switching away from the known. This is the way we've always done it. That is a scary thing for people. We've had this very fragmented system where you've got one maybe your employer and you are financing it, and then you get the insurance that covers it, and then you go to the your doctor, whether it's a Kaiser or a hospital system or a doc in the box, or it could be local, county, state, federal. Somebody else is delivering the care, and then it's back on you to pay for it. And the unfortunate thing is, I think the insurance companies are the ones that are they make money when they deny you care, so you end up paying for more, even though you still need the same amount of health care. So I think as the more we can clear this up and make it less murky and less uncertain, and I think for people, I like to just point my finger to the north and say, hey, look at Canada, because the way that Canada does it is a very much the type of system that we're talking about. You still have a capitalistic market-based type system where you have different hospitals, different healthcare systems who are competing with each other for your business. But when you only have like a national health insurance card that you pull out of your wallet that just says, hey, I've got healthcare insurance because I'm like everybody else. Everybody has healthcare insurance. Now it's on you whether you want to go to this hospital or that hospital. But instead of being about the ability to pay or who your insurance plan or your employer is telling you can go to, because that's not right, it should be your decision, you can go based on where there's the best care, where there's the best outcomes, where there's the safest care, what's closest to your house, what offers the types of services that you need and specialties. And so we'll be competing not on some kind of price, which does anybody really know how much they're going to pay for something when they go in these days? Not really. They'll be competing for the things that matter most to the patients, and they'll be just more efficient. And the other thing I just want to say on the cost side, too, that I think you guys probably know about, but some of your listeners might not. I work at the VA hospital, and a little known thing about the VA hospital is that we, unlike the rest of the healthcare systems, in the U.S., we have the ability to negotiate our own drug prices. Mm-hmm. We are the largest integrated healthcare system in the U.S. So there's a VA in every state and every corner of every state. And we have that single payer buying power, that leverage. So we can say, hey, guess what, Big Pharma? We're not going to pay $10 a pill for this. We're going to pay 10 cents a pill, just like they do in Switzerland and Germany and England and Japan and all these other places. And we negotiate our prices down. So it's very effective that way. And can you imagine if Uncle Sam had the ability to do that with not just Big Pharma, but with the medical device industry and all the other types of costs that are just skyrocketing out of control right now, that would drive costs down, so it takes even less money to pay for it all.
It's interesting. I had somebody that was talking to me about how it might cause lack of competition, and your explanation is made me realize the mistake of her argument. One other thing I wanted to mention too is when I was explaining this to someone, I was explaining it to them that Medicare is for those that are retired, that have hit a certain age, 65, and it basically covers all of their medical expenses, certain medical expenses. There's Part A, Part B, and you can get into that real deep, but basically it's going to cover 80% of it. And what all that Medicare for All is just a lowering of that age that you would qualify for those services from the government. So, for instance, instead of it being 65, what if it was 50?
Right.
How would that dramatically affect the livelihood, the income level, the costs for
the freedom
of someone that age? So, and how many more people would be covered in their negotiating power? Once again, like what you're saying.
And I know you all are probably like me. You've known people in your life who are holding off. They've got something wrong, with their, going on with their health, and they're grinning and bearing it for 2 more years, 3 more years, till they hit that eligibility age. Just hoping that they can hang in there until they're Medicare qualified. That's terrible. Yeah. So, what if we did just lower that age limit? And if it's whether it's over the course of 2 years or 4 years or whatever the transition plan is going to be based on different people's ideas. That's how you could do it. You could just bring it down from 65 to 55 in that first year, and then down to 45 the next year, and 35, and so on. So that could be just exactly how you would phase it in, without totally overwhelming the system all at once.
And it's interesting too. I just found it as a good and easy way to explain to someone the concept, because they're already familiar with the concept of it at retirement, but they're afraid of what the concept. And it was interesting, Valdez. You know, they acknowledged they had a parent who was on Medicare, and they acknowledged that the care that parent was receiving was good, was of high quality, and was taking care of their needs. Mm-hmm. And then when I was able to say, well, okay, now imagine somebody at the age of 50 getting that. That's all we're talking about here. Is like the light bulb went on in her head, you know. So, yeah. So I think that's, and that relates back to what we were all talking about here, and that's how do you sell this? How do you explain this?
I have another question. When you brought up the competition, I was always under the impression that a Medicare for All plan, because when I was younger and I have 3 children, I was below poverty, and so I've been on Medicaid and stuff before. And that was all government run, and you see your doctors, and there's a lot levels of regulation that go along with that program. So on a Medicare for All and the programs that you were talking about with encouraging competition between organizations or between entities, how does that work if the government is regulating the platform of healthcare?
Well, basically, you know, the Affordable Care Act, you know, and thank God for the Affordable Care Act, you know, it took that first step of moving us away from that prospective type system, which is basically, I'm going to try to get you in the exam room as many times as possible, because every time I do, I can charge you more money, to just putting some value standards on it, you know, like, okay, if I see Moses 10 times, but I really only needed to see him 2 times, and all the extra 8 were, you know, not really adding value to Moses' health, but I was making money off it. You know, the Affordable Care Act kind of drew that line in sand. So we have those. We have the the American Health Quality Assurance Agency, or trying to remember what the acronym is, but we have those value-based benchmarks right now. So I think the government already has those kind of things. Really, what we're talking about is just there would be one single payer. And so you would be covered, and basically you would just, regardless of what healthcare system you went to, if you had to get an appendectomy, it's going to be the same no matter what. Now, it'll probably be some cost adjustments by geographic location. You know, they do that up in Canada by the province system. You know, you're going to pay different for something in Vancouver, BC than you are going to.
Oh, so it's a state-based regulation. Basically.
Province-based.
Okay.
You know, in Canada, yeah.
Well, province in Canada, but in the U.S. it would be
you probably wouldn't be paying as much for an appendectomy in Boise, Idaho, as you would be in, you know, greater Los Angeles area.
Okay.
But other than that, the price would be set, and so then it really is just on you, on those healthcare systems, to try to get you in their door as opposed to the door across the street. And again, it's based on access and wait times and quality and patient-centered care and all those good things, rather than, you know, just, you know, well, my employer's, you know, this is in network, so I have to go to this hospital, even though, you know, my friend said that, you know, they have the best cancer treatment over at this other hospital, but that's out of network, so I can't go. Now it would be your choice, and the cost would be the same to you and to the government, no matter what.
That's fantastic. You know, real quickly here, we've got 3 minutes. Tell me a little bit about what Healthcare for All Oregon is doing towards this goal.
Yeah, thank you. So Healthcare for All Oregon, which you can find more about at hcao.org. It's hcao.org for Healthcare for All Oregon. And I encourage anyone that is supporting this Healthcare for All movement to go to our website and sign our statement of support, which says that you too support Healthcare for All type system, not only nationally, but, you know, especially here in Oregon. What we're doing is we're a 501c3 that advocates to really tackle the policy side of this. At raising awareness, education, dispelling some of those fears and some of those myths out there. Right. And the really big news for Healthcare for All this year was that Senate Bill 770 was passed, which was championed by Senator James Manning Jr. Out of the Lane County, Eugene area. And basically what that is it set up an HCAO task force, the Healthcare for All Oregon task force. And what that's going to do is set up a body that's going to look, and they're charged with creating, developing, implementing, and monitoring a publicly funded universal healthcare type system here in Oregon.
Wow.
And some of this, part of this is tied to, there's a bill 1384 that has been championed by Representative Pramila Jayapal out of Seattle. And what that's going to do is that would implement the system, and one of the things it would do is cut some of these red tape that's currently preventing states from kind of doing their own thing. And when that bill is, between the work that this Senate Bill 770 is doing with this task force, which Governor Brown is currently putting together that task force now, the groundwork would be laid here in Oregon. So as soon as we are ready to move, whether it's to a federal system or not, we would be ready to do something here in Oregon. And there's even been discussion of a consortium of like Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, the good old blue wall states coming together and doing their own thing if the federal government doesn't act. But I really am optimistic that between Senator Warren, between Senator Sanders, between Representative Jayapal, between all these other folks that are really doing the hard work out there of educating the American public on why this is the best thing for them and their families, I think I'm really confident that with the Democratic president in 2020, we'll get there.
I would have to agree with you. I think that no matter who the president will be, and that's a whole nother issue or a whole nother show that we could talk about, and that is how aggressive what form of healthcare are they going to promote? Are they going to promote expansion of the ACA so that we get to single payer, so that we get to universal, or are they going to do the Medicare for all approach? And there's pros and cons, but I'll tell you, it's. I think what isn't Warren's little snippet? Be bold or think bold or think big. Be bold. Point being, Medicare for all. It would be, I think, that top level that we'd want to go for. And what would stop us would just be would be that fear. And also, quite frankly, misinformation from those that have vested interests in the current situation.
Who are the lobbyists?
They're the lobbyists,
the
right.
insurance company.
Exactly. And you know better than anybody, Moses, about that. With campaign finance needing reforms and everything, they have a whole lot to lose and a whole lot of money to spend on it. And even if they spend hundreds of millions of dollars, that's just the cost of doing business to these special interests that are currently writing our health care policy today.
That's right.
It comes from society.
It comes from us. And I think that the first step for this is what we're doing right now is we're talking about this, we're airing out the pros and the cons of the plans, and better educating people so that they can start to advocate for it. So thank you for your work down there in Salem to get that task force created and to get us health care for all here in Oregon. Valdez, appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you both for what you're doing, because exactly these types of programs, reaching out to audiences and having these conversations now, not later.
Right.
The earlier we can have them, the better. So thank you for what you're doing for the movement as well, Moses.
Thank you, Valdez.
All right. You take care. Have a great night, sir.
Good night.
Oh, there we go. I didn't mean to cut him off. That button. It was the button.
That was very informative. Thank you for having him call in.
No, I'm really pleased with that, because I think as the end of the conversation, we have to start to talk about this because health care has been a problem in our country for 40+ years.
Yeah.
I mean, Eisenhower tried to get health care coverage, tried to get universal health care.
Yeah.
Truman tried to get it.
Years ago.
I mean, Clinton almost got it. Obama finally gets it, and now it's being, the challenge was that Obama, McConnell, as we were talking about earlier in the show.
McConnell blocked everything.
McConnell blocked everything, and the Republicans blocked the full implementation of the ACA.
Until the insurance company stepped up and said, we will help you by filling your pockets if you fill ours. So it ended up being, Obama actually came the closest to a universal single-payer platform until the Republicans blocked everything on it. The way Obama had it set up, you would know better than I do, but from what I was researching on it, it would be like car insurance. That was where the marketplace came from. It would be like car insurance, and you would choose a company, and they would have different programs for you to choose from, and they would all be affordable. I mean, that's not just access. I can have access, I'm not dying. I can call Kaiser and say I would like a plan, but if I can't afford the plan, it's not accessible.
That's right. Right?
So originally it was supposed to be lined up, as it was explained to me, like car insurance, right? So you pay $300 a month, $150, whatever your life, however that works, your risk on the company. You pay $300 a month, and they cover 80% of your, and you pay your deductibles, and you pay your co-pays.
Right.
That's all it was supposed to be, not $8,000 deductible before they even pay 60%.
Well, that part of that.
You're taking $200 a month out of my check. Some are $750, $800. They are stealing from the American people, these corporations.
Now keep
Get it. Understand.
Right. And remember, but
Sorry.
No, agreed. And we have to remember though that the Affordable Care Act in its original form, that, as you say, would have leveled that playing field so that the premiums would have been affordable because it would have spread out the risk. The Republicans have made it a point to nip away at that requirement so that states are able to opt out. That decreases the amount of the pool, which can be spreading out the costs, which means
everybody pays more.
Everybody pays more, and they did that on purpose to make sure that it would fail. And that's, to me, is just an egregious, almost traitorous action to have taken health care away from children solely to bow down to
people.
And sick people. Ugh,
but look at this administration. They told migrants with sick children here in the United States just to save their lives that they had 33 days to get out of the country. The children are in the hospital. They are only here because they are sick. The care that they're getting here is keeping them alive. And the Trump administration sends out they roll it back. Oh, they don't, we don't know where that stands now. Well, you did it in the first place. What kind of horrible people are you?
Well, now, to offset the negativity that has been generated by the debate around health care and the misinformation and that sort of thing, I want to give you a golden opportunity for some optimism here. And what I'm going to do is play a clip by Senator Cory Booker. Now, let me give some background. Last weekend in Iowa, they held in Des Moines this big dinner, Jefferson and Jackson dinner, and there was over 10,000 people in this big, huge arena in Des Moines, Iowa, and all the presidential candidates went there to speak. And the one that stood out, the speech that stood out the most to me was Senator Cory Booker's speech. There were some great speeches there. Mayor Pete gave a good one, Warren gave a good one, Biden even gave a good one, but the one that stuck out the most for me was this particular one of Cory Booker. And the line that he uses, the hook of this talk that he gives, this speech, is, "I see you and I love you." Okay, and I'm going to leave it at that and let you watch the speech first, and then we can talk about it. Okay, so Marv, let's go ahead and play that Senator Cory Booker video.
10 years ago, this very month, that I was having a conversation in a hospital room with my hero and someone who was like a father to me. It was the last conversation I would ever have with him because 10 years ago this month he died. He was my hero, a man named Frank Hutchins. I'll never forget, every time I would go out to see him, to take him out grocery shopping or whatever, I would say, "Hey Frank, it's Cory," and he would say simply, "I see you." That became our greeting. And so when I walked into that hospital room in his last hours, when they told me it wouldn't be long, and I walked over to his bedside, I said, "Frank, I see you." They told me he couldn't speak, but he forced out those words, "I see you." Tonight I want you to think about his last words to me. "I see you, I love you. I see you, I love you." Frank knew that the power in this country comes from those who are often overlooked, often ignored, but the power of people in a project's basement, "I see you, I love you," is powerful enough to tear down a rich and powerful slumlord. "I see you, I love you." He talked about the power in this country against hate is love. against indifference is empathy, is understanding that we together, that is what has overcome I see you, I love you. And I'll tell you right now in this election, there are those people who think it's naive to think that this election is most importantly about our values, about our ideals. But I tell you, that is where our strength will come from. That is where our power is. It is our connections to each other, our ability to pull together coalitions and unify around our highest ideals. Iowa, I see you. I love you. Let us join together. Join with me. We will rise together. Our best days are ahead. We will rise together. Iowa, I see you. I love you. I see you. I love you. Together, we will rise. 10 years ago, this very month,
obviously, that was the campaign had put all the band and everything like that. But I hope that you see the gist of what his message was. And the gist of that is that we have to, once we get down to a very core basic value of seeing others and loving others, then we can approach our all social ails from a different perspective, solution-oriented, because we see them and we love them and we care for them. So that motivates us to want to make sure that everybody has health care. It motivates us to want to make sure that everybody has affordable housing. A house over there is, has a house over,
It sees what
roof
could
over
be
their head.
instead of what's wrong.
That's exactly right. It sees what could be instead of what is wrong. That is absolutely right. And that's how you win a presidential campaign, is by instilling hope and vision into people and inspiring people. It's not by getting negative. It's not by doing the Trump methodology, although that appeals to a certain group of folks. I mean, that's fine. But love always wins. And establishing that sense of vision and hope and aspiration, man. I mean, think about all the presidential candidates that have won. Bill Clinton, for instance, A Place Called Hope.
Yeah.
He inspired so many people with that. God,
Obama did
Obama.
too.
That's one of the best
Obama
examples,
didn't even really need his hope and change and stuff.
Reagan did that
He
thing.
just did by
Morning in
being who he
America.
is. Yeah, Reagan did.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So it's just, as I say, I wanted to play that because I don't think a lot of people have ever heard Senator Cory Booker speak, and if what he had to say tonight in that clip resonates with you in any way, do some homework on him. Learn some more about Senator Booker. And, there's some folks here in Portland and in the metro area that are supporting Cory Booker. They're organized here,
Okay, cool.
So, get behind some of these folks.
We still got a year.
We still have a year. Isn't that amazing? It is 365 days today from election night 2020.
Yeah.
We all have 1 year to get ready to get it together and to get our priorities straight, but more importantly, to get active, to be that change that he kind of talks about in that video, to get out there and to start talking to your friends and to your neighbors and to talking to associates about how you feel about things and what you think is the right way to do
I live out in
things.
Malala, and I'm sorry, but nothing against Malala, but we have some people out there. Honestly, if you could teach us how to talk to, say, a Trump supporter, I'm just out of the blue, because we have, seriously, in Malala, we have a few of them.
Oh, sure.
If I'm going door to door to canvass for a candidate who's obviously not that, how do I, they're chasing me off their property with a shotgun or something, maybe not at that extreme. How do he opens the door, she opens the door, and I say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm for this Democratic candidate. Oh, get off my property. Or maybe they're like, I'm not interested. How do you get around that?
Okay,
how
well,
address that?
honestly, I'll tell you, the easiest way to get around that, don't knock on that door. And I'll tell you,
I contemplated that,
and
but
I'll tell you why.
fair?
And I'll tell you why. Because if you go and talk to someone that knocking on doors like that, you want to talk to people that are also, you want to motivate Democrats. I've always found personally that when I'm talking to somebody that I know is a Trump supporter, I try to find the things that we have in common and try to emphasize those. What are our common values that we share? Well, we're all Americans. We're all Oregonians. We all care about our environment. We all care about children and making sure that they have all opportunities in life. We all care about...
Most human beings would.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're all Trump supporters.
Right, exactly. I venture to say that we all have more in common than we have in differences. And I also venture to say that in the age of Trump, it's almost become acceptable to highlight those differences.
Yes.
And so I would like to think that the best way to counteract that is to focus on our similarities.
You're right.
You know, at least when we talk. I mean, it might be with it might take us a little bit longer, but yeah, we have to focus on our similarities because we're killing ourselves right now.
And don't talk to the fanatics.
Yeah,
Just don't talk to the fanatics.
You know,
they're where they are.
I used to be in direct
sales.
I used to be in direct sales, and
Oh, you poor man.
I know. Tell me about it. And we used to have a saying. So how does that go? So no, if they say no, so what next?
Yeah,
It's like,
that was
you know,
a big
it's like
one.
not much you can do to try to convince them. You're not going to convince them in that 2 minutes that you have available.
But it's a
face-to-face.
bigger thing. It's bigger than Trump. This is actually, Trump is a symptom of a certain segment of the society embracing a world that they want to see. They literally want they want the nation to themselves. And I've been known to tell a couple of them to go buy an island and take their attitude there and let nature take its course.
Well, you know,
right?
yeah.
Because that's it. I mean, if they aren't willing to assimilate with the rest of their nation, but they want immigrants to.
Well, I think it's because we have gotten away from that core fundamental value of patriotism and love of our country, and that involves everyone being coming under the umbrella of being an American. You know?
Yes.
And I remember seeing something the other day, like this old comic book cartoon ad of Superman talking to school kids or a variety of children or people saying, hey, we're all American. We have our differences, but we're all American, you know. And,
and that's the way it should be.
And that's kind of the way it should be.
That's what made us a strong nation. What happened?
Divisiveness got in the way. Trump realized that he could use that divisiveness.
Trump is a system. Is a symptom. It was already there.
Yeah, he
just brought it out.
He exploited it. Yeah. That I would agree with you with. You know, so
love each other.
So love each other, darn it. Yeah.
Care about your neighbor, man. Really?
And vote. Make it a point to vote. And by the way, you know, we've got 2 minutes left in this show. I do want to thank everybody here at Willamette Falls Media Center. Marv, Donna, thank you very much. Steve, if you're around, thank you. And it's been a real pleasure over the last decade or so to be able to work with these fine folks out here and to work with Caleb. Caleb, if you're watching, God love you, man, and hope we're doing okay.
You are thought of daily.
You are thought of daily, Caleb. Hey, and so real quick, we've got 1 minute. The elections, Kentucky switched from Republican governor to a Democratic governor.
Tides are changing.
Virginia may have a majority in their House of Delegates, which is like our legislature, of Democrats. Point being here is even on an off-cycle election season, the tide is slowly shifting and turning, and it's all coming down to 2020. So if you're out there, get active, man. We need you. Your country needs you. We've got 365 days.
We have Republicans leaving our Senate.
That's true.
Yeah.
Greg Walden.
Greg Walden.
Representative Walden resigned,
Yes.
or is not going to run for re-election. We have a golden opportunity out in Eastern Oregon. So the tides are changing, folks, and the times are changing. And
Our Milwaukee mayor is running.
Mark Gamba's running for Congress. I mean, we're going to have to devote a whole show on Mark.
Support him, please.
Thank you, folks.
If I had a hammer, I'd a hammer in the morning, I'd a hammer in the evening, over this land. I'd a hammer out danger, I'd a hammer out warning, I'd a hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, if I had a bell, I'd a ring it in the morning, I'd a ring it in